is my brother's spooky story, but he gave me permission to share it with y'all. So this one night, I guess he couldn't get any sleep, so he went to the living room and was watching TV. He had his window propped open because he said it was summer and he wanted to get a breeze. So he's watching TV and he said for some reason he felt that he needed to look outside, like something was calling his attention. So as he looked outside, he said he saw this white shadow floating on top of his car. He said it was on the driver's side, sorry. And then a black shadow came up and met this white shadow, but the black shadow was coming from the passenger side of the car. So he said when this happened, he said he got spooked out, but he didn't pay much attention. He thought, maybe it was something of his imagination, or he didn't really think it was anything paranormal at that time, I guess. But as weeks went by, he kept thinking about that. And then one day, I guess he ends up getting in a huge argument with his wife, so he decides to go out for a drive to cool off. And when he comes back, he said he's turning into an alley to get into his apartment when all of a sudden he gets hit by an oncoming car. And my brother spun out of control and he lost consciousness. He didn't remember who he was, what had happened to him, and he had to be airlifted to another hospital. And upon investigation, they found out that this person had actually accelerated to purposely hit my brother. And after the accident, when my brother was finally able to talk about everything, he remembered how a couple of weeks before he had seen that white shadow cross over on top of his driver's side and the black shadow cross over on the top of the passenger side. And the whole passenger side of my brother's car was completely crushed. Where he was sitting at, it was basically untouched. And so then we got even more frightened because that is the side that his wife usually sits on and his child would always sit on, my nephew. So he doesn't know if it was a coincidence that he's seen those shadows or it was a premonition that something bad was going to happen to him.
I had a whole conversation with someone that I thought was my husband. A follower named Lupe sent me this spooky story, and she says that one night her and her husband were driving home from work and she didn't really feel like cooking dinner. They had some leftover food from the night before, and she told her husband, well, I can just make a rice, we can have a quick dinner and we can call it a night. Her husband was like, that's cool, I'm tired anyways, I am so down for that. They get home and they both enter through the back door, and she says that the back door leads them almost directly to the kitchen. So she stayed in the kitchen and she saw that her husband went somewhere, but she's not stalking him to see exactly what he's doing. So she's minding her business. She starts on the rice, and then a few minutes after, her husband comes up to her in the kitchen and he is staring right at her. Weirdly, I might add. He looks into her eyes so serious and tells her, can you come with me to the restroom and help me shave the back of my neck? And she's like, okay, yeah, let me just finish making this rice and I'll be right there. She says that she looks at him because he doesn't say okay, he doesn't nod, he doesn't say okay, yeah, that's fine. He just turns around and walks to the restroom. She finishes the rice. She goes into the restroom and the restroom is dark. The light is not on. So she's goes and checks the bedroom. Nobody there. She opens the back door. It's dark. The car is still there. She's like, where did this guy go? So she walks around into the living room and he is laying on the couch in the living room. She said that she approaches him and tells him, hey, let's go to the restroom so I can help you shave your neck. And he's like, what? And she's like, I already finished the rice. Hurry up so we can eat dinner. Let's go to the restroom so I can help you shave your neck and we can eat dinner and lay down. And he's like, why would I need your help? What? And she's explaining to him, honey, you went to the kitchen, you asked me for help, and I am ready. And he's like, I came straight to this couch. I haven't moved from here. So now she starts explaining everything to him, and he's like, honey, I have not left this couch. I heard you talking to someone in the kitchen, but I thought you were talking on the phone with your mom or with your sister. I have not left this couch. Hell no. So you're telling me that Lupe had a whole conversation with something. She didn't state that this ever happened again. I'm sure she would have told me if it did, but How? Why? I don't understand. Like, what is a mimic? What is it? I need someone to explain because I'm freaking out. But thank you so much to Lupe for sending me this spooky story. As always, if you guys have any stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them, and I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
You guys want to hear a story about a girl who got an attachment, and every time she saw the attachment, it would literally decompose in front of her, and then she would get violently ill, and then it started tormenting her family? Okay, sit down. So when Molly was 15 years old, she was leaving a friend's house. They had been hanging out, and the other friend had been, and she was just watching over the friend. She decided that she was going to go home, though. She lived between a few abandoned buildings and an extremely large graveyard. She was maybe about 6 blocks from her apartment when she walked past this old, forgotten mechanic shop. Now, the garage door was usually closed when she would walk past this, but this day, it was open. But, of course, being the curious person that she was, she peeks inside, and she sees this old, rundown yellow buggy. But there was this man in a blue jumpsuit standing by it, and for some reason, this made her feel really nauseous. So she's like, F this, I'm getting out of here. She turns around, she starts walking away, but every time she turns around, this man is behind her. Now, he is never more than 10 feet behind her, so she decides to run. She starts running, and she looks behind her again, and he's still behind her. She continues to run even more. She keeps looking behind her, and he's still behind her. But the weird thing about this is every time she would turn around, it's not like he was chasing after her. He would just be standing there watching her. So he was somehow getting to her and then stopping before she would turn around and just stand there and watch her. So she wasn't really sure how he was moving, right? Well, she finally gets to her house, and she runs into her house, and she just slams the door, and she locks it, and she runs up to her brother's room, and she tells her brother, like, look, this man is following me. I'm freaked out right now. So he's like, bet. So he looks out the window, and the man is just standing in the street, standing there watching them. Well, over the next few days, she got extremely ill, and then a span of a few days after that, it got really bad. So one day, she's walking into her kitchen, and she's just standing in her kitchen when suddenly she hears this man's voice go, "Hey!" right outside the window of her kitchen. She screamed so loud that her father actually came running out of her parents' room and was like, what the hell is going on? And all she could muster out was, there's a man outside. So her father goes and looks, there's nobody there. Well, a few hours later, she gets this horrible, severe fever. She says at this point that she thinks that she's hallucinating because the next thing that she saw was absolutely horrifying. So she just goes into her bedroom and she's just chilling. She doesn't feel good, right? When suddenly she sees what she thinks is her dad peek around the corner. She says, "Are you okay?" And she gets no response. So, of course, she gets up and she walks into the hallway. And what she thought was her father was absolutely not her father, but that man standing in her hallway. His skin was decayed and it was melting over his eyes, and he had bloody scabs all over his face. And his hair was falling out, and he was just standing there watching her. She said that she just stood there horrified. She blinks and he's gone. Somehow, she brushes this off. No idea how she did this, but she's a G, because she goes to bed, she falls asleep, and the next morning she has bruises all over her legs and arms. She said that they were full-blown handprints. So she tells her mom and dad about it, but they just blow it off like it's nothing. Her brother, on the other hand, did take this seriously. He believed her, and he actually took her to the doctor, and the doctor was like, we have no idea how this happened, how there's bruises and handprints all over your body, unless somebody did this to you. And she's like, nobody did this to me. I don't know what happened. So she just goes home after this. Well, the next day, she's in her brother's room just chilling with her brother when they hear a knock on the door. Assuming it was their parents, they just both said, "Come in." Nothing. No one answered. And then the doorknob just slowly starts to twist. It opens up, and in walks that man. And again, he is decayed everywhere. And she said that she has never heard her brother scream before, and her brother full-blown screamed. So she knows at this point that she's not hallucinating because her brother is now seeing it too. Now, a few years go by, and they actually don't see or hear from this man until she turns around 18 years old and she moves out of her house. Now, she now lives in an entirely different county, city, and she has a roommate. And she's in the middle of telling her roommate about this entity, about this thing, when suddenly they hear the garage door open. She said that this did not make sense because everybody was home, so her and her roommate are just sitting there like, who just opened the garage door? When suddenly that man walks into the room that they are in, except for this time, he looks so much more decayed, it's horrifying. So her and her roommate are just sitting there frozen in fear, staring at this thing, when it just turns around and walks out of the door. Not even 20 minutes later, they hear her roommate's mom scream at the top of her lungs. So they both freak out and they run upstairs to see what's going on with his mom. They get up into her room. She comes walking out horrified, and she's covered in blood. And there's a puddle of on her floor and a puddle of in her bathroom, and it's come from nowhere. Nobody is injured, nobody is hurt. There is just blood everywhere. She said that this blood was fresh, and that apparently his mom had just woken up in it, and all covered in blood and seen it everywhere. Now, a week after this happened, Molly actually moved out of that house, and she didn't see him again, but her aunt saw him in her house. Apparently, her aunt knows how to perform rituals to get rid of these types of things, because her aunt, after seeing him, apparently banished him somehow with some type of ritual or spell, and she has not seen him since. She's 21 now, and she has only had one other odd interaction with a spirit, but she said that is an entirely different story. So what did you guys think about that story?
It's been about a year since I visited the Haunted Museum in my hometown, so let's talk about it. So if you've been here a long time, then you know I visited this museum twice, and I am feeling this weird itch to go again. But I know if I make a video about it and I talk about my experiences, I won't want to go because it'll scare me again. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. And what's important to the story is the backstory and the context of the backstory. I had just gotten into content creation, and I had mentioned to my boyfriend that I wanted to visit a real haunted place, because I have never intentionally been to a haunted place, especially a haunted museum with hundreds of thousands of artifacts from different places and countries. So I was very curious, to say the least. And I thought that direction was the way I wanted my channel to go, the way I wanted my social media to go, the way that I wanted my content creation to go. I wanted to be one of those YouTubers and social media people who go and investigate places. Wrong. I don't think I could do it with just me and my boyfriend ever, and it's because of this. The way the museum is set up is you walk in, you sign a waiver, you're able to rent spirit boxes, flashlights, etc., etc. And this is a self-guided tour completely in the dark. There's multiple levels, so you can either go to the basement or stay on the main floor. But when I say that they really utilize every single square foot, every single inch of this place, I genuinely mean it. From the moment you walk from the front of the museum into the actual museum where you're able to look at things, there are things from ceiling to floor, everywhere. And if you've been here a long time, then you know exactly what I'm about to say. It feels like there are thousands of eyes on you when you walk in. And I'm not just talking about the dolls. I mean, from every single angle, you can feel something or someone watching you. And the first time I went, there was no one in the museum. Both times I went, there was like literally no one in the museum. The very first time I went, I was really nervous because of the experiences that other people were telling me about, and they were like, yeah, this place is actually haunted. But something important to note is this museum used to be in a haunted saloon like 3 towns over, and then they tore the saloon down, so they relocated everything and all the haunted objects, including pieces of the original saloon, to their new location. Mind you, this is like thousands of artifacts and like hundreds of dolls, mirrors, you name it, they have it. Anyways, first time I get there, I am walking through and I am immediately very, very scared. And ghost hunting 101, you should not go into anything being afraid, ever. And if you do go into something afraid, you need to have protection of some sort. I had nothing, and I was just raw dogging this experience because I didn't know what to do. I was pretty uncomfortable upstairs, but the workers had told us, like, everything cool is downstairs. And y'all, I wish they allowed, like, filming, and I might email them to be like, hey, can I come and take a video of the place so I can show my viewers? Because the basement is dirt floors, and they have these red lights everywhere for, like, the vibe. It makes everything so much scarier. Like, but in the basement, all the way to the back, there is this, like, little roped off area. And at the front, there is a huge jug of hand sanitizer. But the jug is not full of hand sanitizer. It is full of holy water that you can use to bless yourself before going into this roped off area. And they have a very specific sign that says everything used in this room, everything that is in this room, has been used for very dark things. We're talking like human sacrifice. We're talking about rituals, things like that. I also want to clarify that they have a roped off area and then an additional room behind the roped off area where the really bad stuff is. I also need to clarify that I had no idea that that was back there until I got there. And the whole time I'm telling people, I'm like, I just feel like there is something like peeking around the corner of the back room. And it could have been the vibe. It really could have, because they intentionally make it scary looking. And I kept telling my boyfriend, I was like, I just don't like it down here. It's very heavy. It's very weird. We get to that area. I bless myself. I go in. I don't take a ton of time looking at things. And this is specifically because I could not think. Like, I could not read a sentence. I could not form sentences. I could not speak. I couldn't even focus. But I do remember my boyfriend just like rushing to the very back room because he had been to the museum before and he already knew it was back there. He's like, oh, come on. I just put my face through the doorway and it seriously felt like I was putting my face up to saran wrap. Like, terrible. I said, absolutely not. I leave, bless myself again, bless my best friend, bless my boyfriend, everything. Long story short, I decided to go back upstairs. I look at this Ouija board. It makes me very, very sick. My biggest fear is throwing up. So I felt nauseous, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I said, that is it. I got up and I left. And I will not lie. It really, really messed me up. Feeling that way in the museum and then afterwards really messed me up. I was not okay the rest of the night. I didn't talk to any of my friends the rest of the night. And then I wanted to go again. Now, the second time, I was much more prepared. I was like, okay, I can't be afraid, blah, 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 because the spirits will pick on me. And if you've been here a long time, then you know I am more sensitive to things like that happening, but not so sensitive that it's, like, debilitating. Second time is much better. I go to the basement. I'm able to look at things and see things, and I see a Dybbuk box. I see some skulls. I see whatever. But I do still feel the eyes everywhere on me. And it's, like, a gross feeling. It's not like a, oh, someone's watching me. It's like, there is something that wants me to pay attention to it. So we're all walking around. I get a weird feeling and I'm like, I want to go back upstairs. We're walking upstairs. We have a spirit box. The spirit box is saying things sometimes, but only with certain artifacts. We get upstairs. We're walking around. And it's at this point where we're all kind of like, oh, there's nothing really happening. And at this point, it's me, my friend, my boyfriend, all standing in like a little triangle. And we're standing kind of near the staircase that goes into the basement. All of a sudden we hear bum, 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 like someone running up the stairs. And we thought somebody was like messing with us because it sounded so real that we walked over to the stairs and we were like, what the hell was that? There's no one there. No one in the basement. And as we're standing at the top of the stairs, I remember I was standing on the left side of my boyfriend and he was holding the spirit box out and he's like, is there anything there that wants to communicate? And I'm gonna be super honest. I hate that phrase. I hate it. Every single time someone says something like that, it's never just communication. And you want to know how I know that? I was wearing a claw clip. All my hair was back, and I suddenly feel something touching my hair. And that was my breaking point where I was like, I'm leaving. I don't like it. And there had been moments leading up to that point, obviously. And the other instance of that was when I was in the basement and something grabbed my jacket and tugged on it. But I just rolled it off as my friend messing with me. And I know this video is working because I have chicken skin. But what I think is ironic about all of this is the people who own this museum where I live also have another museum of the same kinds of things in Florida. And I guess there are worse things at that one since it's a bigger city than where I live. And ironically, my boyfriend and I are planning to go to Florida sometime soon-ish. So maybe I'll stop there. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories.
Somebody sent me one of the most insane stories I've ever read. I was in bed and I have to come downstairs to tell you. So there's a couple and they're renting their first flat together on the outskirts of London and they got it for a banging price. And that's because the rent was kind of already partially paid for the first 6 months. The previous tenant just kind of got up and left, and everything that they'd paid up front, they just said to the landlord, just keep it because I'm leaving the country and it's too much hassle doing deposits and everything. So as a goodwill gesture, the landlord knocked off the price for the next tenants and their next 6 months of rent. However, there was an issue with this flat. It absolutely ponged of curry and they could not get rid of it. And even when the couple viewed the house, the landlord was like, I'm going to get a professional carpet cleaner in here because I don't know why that smell is so strong. So on moving day, the day before, the carpet cleaner had been in there and fumigated the place and it still smelled really bad. So then the landlord decided to change the carpets for them. But guess what? It still smelled of curry. They then thought, well, maybe it's in the walls, maybe it's in the paint, you know, because paint and wallpaper can absorb smells like smoke. It's really hard to get rid of. So the landlord repainted and stripped some wallpaper. However, there was one patch of wallpaper that when they stripped, they noticed that there was fresh plasterboard behind it. And the landlord was like, I haven't done any renovations in here. ever. Like this wasn't here before. And while a contractor, the landlord and the couple were present, they peeled back this plasterboard and they found the source of the curry smell. It was a body, right? Masked in all the spices to cover the smell that a body would make. Who thinks of this stuff? Like, who? Imagine marinating someone. Like, it's really not funny. It's not funny, but it is. Do you know what I mean? It's not funny. It's really not funny, Jordan. Obviously, the previous tenant was guilty. They probably thought they were getting away with it with this ingenious idea. But at least we know now what smell can cover decay. And by the way, if anyone gets caught doing this, it can lead back to you if you viewed this video. I literally love it when people send me wild stories like this. If you've got one, DM me or email me and I'll read yours.
This is what happens when a cheater pushes the wrong person too far. The person who submitted this wants to be anonymous because it does have to do with brujeria, but she's not mad about it. Maribel and Emilio have been married for about 8 years. When they first got married, the plan was that they were going to stay at his parents' house temporarily, just long enough for them to save money, and then they would move out. That time never came. They ended up staying at his parents' house for years. Which would it be so horrible aside from the fact that Emilio's mother was horrible to Maribel. She constantly would talk down to her and would even make her feel as if she wasn't good enough for her son. In that time, they ended up having 3 children. Around the time all of this happened, the youngest was about 2. She had a 5-year-old and she had a 7-year-old. One day, out of nowhere, Maribel is completely blindsided when she finds out that Emilio is having an affair with a co-worker, which is already bad enough, but what made it even worse is the fact that now this co-worker was coming around the house and even being around her children, and the mother-in-law was perfectly fine with all of this. Being that Maribel had been a stay-at-home mom for all those years, she never had any sort of job experience or even savings, so she was pretty much stuck living in her worst nightmare. One day, Maribel finally had enough and she ended up calling one of her brothers for help. She ended up finding one of the smallest, cheapest apartments that she could find in town. She started working at the small restaurant, not really making a lot of money, just enough to get by, but the good thing about it was that the owner of the restaurant was extremely understanding and knew Maribel's situation and would allow her to bring her 2 youngest kids to work with her. One day, now brace yourself, Emilio walked into the restaurant where Maribel was working with the woman that he cheated on her with. Maribel, of course, refused to serve them. Thankfully, her boss was understanding because once again, she knew the whole situation. She quietly just set Maribel aside and told her, "Don't worry, I will help you handle this." She told her to leave her kids with a friend and to meet her behind the restaurant. She ended up driving them to this very run down part of town. Like the apartment looked like it was falling apart. Her boss looked at her and said, "This is where I'm taking you. She's gonna help you. She's a bruja." At first, Maribel didn't believe in any of that stuff, but she was furious, so she went ahead and listened. The bruja told Maribel to bring a jar of her morning urine. The bruja then went ahead and took it and did whatever rituals to it, and then took Maribel to a cemetery where Maribel buried it, next to one of the graves. She said that this would cause Emilio to live his consequences, or to experience his consequences, that his life would soon start to fall apart and would be payback for what he had done to Maribel and his children. Not long after, it worked. His relationship with that woman ended up falling apart. He started having problems everywhere. Even his family turned their backs on him. Meanwhile, Maribel's life only continued to get better. She ended up moving into a bigger place where all of her kids had their own bedrooms. She was able to find an even better paying job. She ended up just focusing on her kids and work. Not long after, Emilio kept crawling back trying to get Maribel to move back with him to his mom's house. Absolutely not.
So this man that tells this story says that he's seen some wild things in his life, but there's always an explanation. But what happened to him, his brother, and his dad when he was a kid cannot be explained, because what they saw was something like out of a science fiction movie. He didn't want to give his exact location away, but he said that his family had just moved into this old house southwest of Houston, Texas. Their house was on the edge of town, and they had a huge backyard. There was a 6-foot-tall wooden privacy fence that divided them and the neighbors on the one side, and then a 4.5-foot-tall chain link fence that ran along the 3 other sides of the property. He and his brother shared a bedroom that was an old converted sunroom on the back of the house that looked out onto the backyard. It had floor-to-ceiling windows all along that back wall looking out into the backyard. There wasn't many options for where to put the bed since it was a converted sunroom, so his head of his bed was against the walls facing the backyard, and his brother's bed was directly the opposite with his headboard on the other wall facing him. So when the brother's on his bed, he's looking out, he can see the backyard. He said one night they stayed up late and they were sitting on their beds just talking about random things, and all of a sudden his brother got really quiet, to the point where he thought his brother had fallen asleep. But then he hears his brother whisper in a shaky voice, but he couldn't make out what he said. So he's like, what? And his brother tries to speak again, and he's like, what? Speak up, I can't hear you. And his brother forced out a whisper, don't move and be quiet. But he's thinking he's probably pranking him or something, so he whips around and turns to look out that window, and he is met face to face with a creature that looks like a dog, nose pressed up to the glass. They were pretty much nose to nose staring at each other. He said this thing was enormous, and he just let out the loudest scream. He said it wasn't his proudest moment, but he was absolutely terrified. So this thing ducks under the window, ran to the side of the yard, leaped over the 4.5-foot tall chain link fence, and disappeared into the darkness. So the dad runs into the bedroom, and the mom is not far behind. And when they get there, he explains that there was something looking at them through the window. So the dad goes and grabs his pew-pew from the bedroom and goes out the side door to see what's going on. He comes back inside because he doesn't see anything, and they say, you're probably just had a nightmare. And the brother wasn't any help because he was closed and would not speak, would not say that he had seen anything. So at this point, they don't want to sleep in the bedroom. They wanted to go sleep in the living room, but the parents are writing it off as knock it off, go to bed. So as they are forced to be in their bedroom with the floor to ceiling windows, they are laying there rattled, just terrified. They are both sharing the brother's bed at this point because they are just so scared, and their backs are to the other wall, so they are facing out and they have a clear shot of the backyard. They said after a while, this creature approached the property again. It was so huge that its shoulder blades were the same height as the 4.5-foot tall chain link fence. It sniffs up along the property line and then effortlessly just hops over and is now in the backyard. And now it approaches the glass window again of their bedroom, and it's got its nose pressed up against just like it did before. And these boys are freaking out. So at this point, they're like, F this, and they go to jump out of the bed, and then all of a sudden, there's a huge bang and a flash of light, and this thing gets knocked sideways out of the view of the window. So then this thing comes back into view, and it's running down the length of the huge backyard. It leaps up over the chain link fence and clears the back alley behind it and lands into the neighbor's yard in the back. He said it is at least a 15 to 20 foot jump minimum, and this thing cleared it like it was nothing. And then they see their dad with pew-pew in hand run across, come through the side door and slam it behind him. He's screaming, we gotta go, pack your bags. And they get up, go, and stay at a hotel for the night. And the mother refuses to believe that they all saw what they said they saw. Their dad was so rattled that he said, we're moving immediately. Like, he didn't even want to go back to the house. He just wanted to get out of there forever. But his wife wouldn't have it. So eventually, about 6 months later, after persistence with the dad not wanting to be there anymore, they do end up moving. He says these are the coastal plains regions of Texas. There are no huge canines like that. Like, they might have some stray dogs or coyotes, but nothing that huge. And come to think of it, I don't think anything that huge as a canine is supposed to even exist anywhere. But their dad swears that he hit that thing from 15 feet away with a slug from his pew-pew, and it hit him right under the arm in the ribs. I mean, that thing should have been annihilated, but it just effortlessly ran up the yard and leapt into the distance. And get this, the dad said that what was the creepiest thing about it was when it initially jumped the fence to get into the yard, it, while crouched, crept over to the window on its hind legs. He watched it walk up to the window on 2 legs, and then he said it stretched out to make itself taller to peer into the window, and its body looked all wrong. Like it was supposed to be a dog kind of thing, but it was just totally different than any other canine animal he's ever seen. He describes it as almost seeming like a stocky person wearing a dog's suit, but he could tell it wasn't a suit. Like, this thing was a real being. He also said that when he saw it approach the property the first time, when it was supposed to be sniffing and circling around, its eyes were locked on the window as though it were waiting for an opportune moment, like sniffing, pretending to sniff around the ground, all while being locked on the true prize inside the room. Almost like it was kind of waiting to see if anything was going to come at it before it decided to go and get what it wanted. He said that they've had dogs their whole lives, and everything about what this creature was doing was just all wrong. Later on, the dad did tell them that what gave it away, what made him believe there was really something out there to make him grab his pew-pew and sort of keep a lookout, was the look on the brother's face, how pale he was. Like, that was not like him to act like that. Like, he had absolutely seen something that terrified him. So that dad was prepared and ready, looking outside, thinking initially maybe there's just some creeper out there, like some person, but thank God he did stare out that window until he saw this thing come back, because who knows what could have happened if he hadn't been there to scare it off. This is one of the creepiest ones, I feel like, for me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What could that have been? If you have your own creepy story time, anything similar, please email it to the email in my bio. And if you haven't yet, please follow for more creepy story time.
You want to have some scary shit? This story takes place in Seguin, Texas. Again. At a nursing facility that I will not be naming. So there is a unit here at the facility, and let's call it Unit 500. Now, this unit is filled with VIP patients. They've come from a lot of money, and they use their influences sometimes, not for the best reasons. Anyway, there is a patient there, and let's call her Lily. Now, Lily was a different type of patient. You know, usually when you have patients that kind of scream out at night, you put them in psych wards, but she was mixed in with the regular folks. The aides would round on her often because she would scream, "Get her out of here, get her out of here." They would come in the room. Of course, the room was cold, but they would never see anything. "She just won't leave me alone." They would tell her, "Miss Lily, just calm down, chill out. No one's here." And it seems that the sicker Miss Lily got, the more she saw this woman. Side note, the residents that were close to death would always see these children, a boy and a girl, running through the facility or standing next to them or playing in their room, destroying property. Again, mentioned, the sicker she got, the more she would see the lady, the more violent things that would happen in this room. They would hear things being thrown around. And she was actually thrown off the bed onto the floor several times, to the point to where they had to lower her bed all the way to the floor, and eventually then put a mattress on the floor to keep her there at night so she wouldn't harm herself again. Now, the events that occurred were the strangest the night Lily died. They were rounding, and the nurse states that Lily was yelling bloody murder and kept saying, "Get her out of here, get her out of here, get her out of here." When they entered Lily's room, they witnessed the lady having been clawed from head to toe. There were blood splatters on the ceilings, on the wall. It looked like a bear had mauled Miss Lily. She kept screaming, "She won't leave me alone. Get her out of here." Well, the police were called also because these events had to be reported. Miss Lily stuck to her story, but 2 hours later, she was gone. She had passed away. Now, since then, residents have been in her room
and no one else has seen this lady. They do see the children, but they don't see the lady with the claws. There have been no instances of someone being thrown out of bed onto the floor. And to mention, the PD found no fault with the facility. They have no idea what happened. Even Miss Lily's nails, they were cut. There was no blood on her nails from her or skin. And either way, how would she claw herself from head to toe? Literally lateral scratches, arms, legs, stomach, everything. All I can say is be careful what you do in life. Sometimes it catches up with you when you least suspect it.
This woman attempted to do horrible things to her stepchildren. Little did she know, though, that those kids were protected by a Haitian law. I am back with another spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted this story Tasha. So Tasha said that she had this friend. Well, ex-friend. Because after what her ex-friend told her she tried to do, Tasha says she cut her off completely. So Tasha's ex-friend was a white woman who was dating a white guy with 2 biracial daughters that he had with a Caribbean woman. They weren't together anymore, but he and the mom shared custody of the kids. And Tasha says that they were 2 beautiful little girls. Now, her ex-friend, we're gonna call her Karen. So Karen starts telling Tasha that she felt uncomfortable that her man's ex was black. And she felt like his kids were too pretty. She said every time he had the kids over, he would just spend a lot of time with them. I mean, as he should. And well, Karen started getting jealous. Then it got dark. Well, Karen said that she started to hate the kids. She admitted that she felt like she wanted to hurt them. And every single time she even thought about harming those kids, she would get violently sick. Hives, stomach flu, random pains. She would fight her man over the kids being there on their custody time. And things got so bad that eventually, Karen's man had to tell his ex-girlfriend that his new girlfriend wasn't comfortable having the children around. At the time he's telling her this, it's his custody time, not hers. Anyway, Karen told Tasha after months of hating those kids, she tried doing things to them. However, every time she tried something bad would happen to Karen's family. Her mom got sick. She got sick. Hell, she almost got into accidents. Then Karen tells Tasha that she started to dream about the children's mother. Dreams where the mother would show up and fight her. She'd wake up sore and bruised. And 1 month before a barbecue that her man was hosting, her mom and brother got into a horrible accident. Tasha went to the hospital with Karen, and Karen's family were in critical condition. And that's when everybody in the friend group started seeing a pattern. The energy around Karen was bad. And that's when everybody in the friend group started avoiding her. But then came the final straw. Another barbecue rolled around. The kid's mom had to pick up the girls from the event. Karen told Tasha that she hasn't been sleeping well because she saw shadows in her room, dreamt of being chased, covered in worms, graveyard dirt, everything. She was going through the ringer. Karen said that she woke up screaming several nights in a row. So, the day of the barbecue, she put on makeup, dressed up because she knew the kid's mom was gonna be there. Karen said that the woman came up to her, introduced herself, and they talked politely about the kids. The mom even said, I know they can be a hassle sometimes, just trying to make small talk. But Karen wanted to be petty. So she goes on to tell the woman how her man is taking her on these trips, buying her these expensive gifts, how she's so happy just to get under this woman's skin. Karen told Tasha that the kid's mom just smiled and said, That's nice. I hope he treats you better than he treated me. Then the mom turned to walk away with her kids, but looked back and said, By the way, how have you been sleeping? And Karen said a chill ran through her entire body. She lied and she said, like a baby. To which the woman said, Good. I hope you're having nothing but sweet dreams. It was nice to finally meet you. Smiled again and walked to the car. Well, Karen knew at that moment that that woman was not somebody to play with. But did Karen learn her lesson? She didn't. I'm shadow banned, so I'm forced to do part 2s. It's part 2 Tuesdays. Like, I don't know what to tell y'all. Just come back for part 2. Leave a comment. I love y'all. And you can't yell at me. It's my birthday week.
Let's read another scary story that was sent to us. This one's kind of long, so get comfy. I've lived in my house for 4 or 5 years, and ever since I can remember, there has always been something off. For context, I've always been a sensitive person when it comes to ghosts or anything creepy. I get a bad feeling and it feels like I have the stomach virus mixed with the flu. My throat closes and my stomach twists and I know there is something around. I first noticed things happening around last year when I was laying in my bed during the weekend around 3 a.m. I heard footsteps and creaking and I just thought it was my brother, so I got up and went to check and there was no one there. So I went downstairs and the whole time I was walking I had that sick feeling. When I got downstairs I found my brother passed out on the couch, so I went back to my room and I could not sleep. I had that sick feeling all night. More things like this have happened ever since that night, like whispering while I'm upstairs when no one is up there, or I'll hear my mom call my name when she's not home. I've heard of mimics before and I thought for a while maybe that's what it was. Things like this have also happened when I've had friends over. My friend was at my house and I had changed all of the lights upstairs because some had went out. While she was over, 2 lights stopped working and every time I went in there they would work again. But when she did it, they would flicker and stop working, as if something were upset. The next day, my friend and I went outside to swim, and we brought a speaker. We set the speaker on the porch and started listening to music. After a while, we realized we could no longer hear the music, thinking the speaker just disconnected. The speaker then started playing again, but it was creepy, weird noises. We went inside and put it away, and when my mom got home, we told her what had happened. She said maybe it was broken, but ever since my friend left, it's been working perfectly fine. I still deal with weird feelings and noises every time I'm home alone, and sometimes it gets a little too quiet. Okay, that story is so creepy, and the main reason that she sent it to me is because she is looking for advice. So if anyone who is like educated in the spirit world and ghosts and stuff like that, maybe like a medium or something, if somebody maybe could like comment down below what they think this might be in her home, she would really appreciate that. I think the only way for her to like get these creepy things to stop is if she can figure out exactly what it is. But some advice would be greatly appreciated, and I hope this stuff stops soon because that is so freaking creepy. I couldn't imagine.
It mimics my grandma. So my name is Rosalia from South Africa, Johannesburg. I believe that's how you pronounce it, or Johannesburg. Please forgive me. So one Sunday, me and my grandma woke up very early in the morning so that I can help her get ready for church. I cleaned the house and made breakfast, and she bathed in the bathroom. She eventually finished bathing and eating and went to church. I was left alone since there was nothing for me to do. I did some meditation and mindfulness. Then after, I cooked some lunch dinner and I slept on the couch. Hours into my sleep, I hear the door of the kitchen opening, and in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's my grandma. But something was strange. I could feel it. There was something odd about her. I'm an empath, so I definitely know the energies of people who are around me, especially my grandma. She walks in and I look at her. She's like, hey, I'm back. And I said to her, I cooked. Should I dish them up for you? And she says no. I was confused to why she would reject food, but I was like, okay. I go on to ask about church service, and she looks at me with a strange look and says the service was good. As I was talking to her, my intuition told me to look at her outfit, and I realized that my grandma wasn't wearing the church t-shirt when she left. She was wearing her church uniform, which included a blazer, and that scared me because I continued to examine her, and she looked like my grandma, but she wasn't my grandma. And in my mind, I'm like, why didn't I hear the gate open? Because the gate of my house is really loud, and you could tell that someone is coming in, and I'm a light sleeper, so I didn't hear the gate. I started doing a little prayer in my head because I now know this isn't my grandma. After doing that little prayer, I lied to her, or it, that I had to go outside to fetch the mop, and I fucking left the house and the yard and stayed at the neighbor's house, and it was like 7 p.m. when I heard the gate open. I went out, and indeed it was my grandma, and quickly ran to her. She asked me why the house was dark. I asked her if she came in earlier today around 5, and she said no. She got held up at her sister's house, and that's when it hit me, and I told her what I experienced. I continued to experience the mimicking spirit, but I finally got rid of it. If I was put in that situation, like with her, where she's like, I know this is not my grandma, she's praying and she's like, I'm gonna go outside for the mop, bitch, I would not be able to do that. The way this mimic would know that I knew they were a mimic and probably like just end me on the spot, there's no way I would have been so smart and been like, oh, I'm gonna go get something outside, because I would have been scared, crying, probably like frozen in fear, and yeah, what the fuck. Also, like, how did you get rid of it? We need to know more details. But what do you guys think?
So listen to the story that I came across. If this had happened to me, I would have lost my mind. So the guy that tells this story says that he always jokes around and says that the insane thing that happened to him could only have been aliens. But the more you think about it after you hear it, I don't know. You tell me. So he said this happened to him when he was younger. It was a hot summer night and he was getting ready to go to bed. He said he sat down on the edge of his bed and he got this overwhelming sense of dread. He said it wasn't just a bad feeling. It was like an inner knowing, a knowing that something was coming to get him. He said it was like a horrifying reoccurrence, like a feeling or a knowing that something was about to happen again that happened before. He said it was like his body could feel it, knew it was coming, but his mind didn't understand what it was. As he sat there, he said he felt like it was close, probably within eyesight already. He was absolutely terrified, but he had no idea of what. He also said, but it was going to get me no matter what I did. When this happened, he said he hadn't sat down on his bed for more than a few seconds, so he knew it couldn't have been sleep paralysis. He hadn't gone to fall asleep in any way. So he's sitting on the edge of his bed and he turns his head slowly to scan his room, and all of a sudden it's the next morning. Just like that. He said he was still dressed and everything. His head was in mid-turn, except it's the next day now. He's like, 1 second, I'm terrified at night, and the next, it's morning. He said he felt well rested, despite the fact that only 1 second had gone by that he was awake for, mind you. He said, so he went downstairs and went on about his day. He told multiple people what happened, and everybody kind of like took it in and didn't bat an eye, acted like nothing was abnormal about that. He said after so many people just kind of didn't think anything of it, he dropped it. That instinct, that intuition, that gut feeling, that's not for nothing. All right, drop your thoughts in the comments, and I love a good alien UFO story. If you have anything weird that ever happened to you like that or to someone you know, please share it. I would love to hear it. You could even email me your story to the email in my bio.
Do you believe in curses? It's really going to be hard for you not to after I tell you about what happened at 1000 Lombard Street in San Francisco. This is Pat Montandon. She was a famous socialite back in San Francisco during the 60s and stuff, super popular. She had these parties all of the time. One night she decided to have a party that made her life go to shit. This guy with the snake, he is Anton LaVey. He is the founder of the church of the dude that runs the underworld. I've got to watch what I say on here. So he meets her, gives her this potion that was supposed to be like a love potion or whatever. It gave her an idea to throw a new party, and it was like an astrology party. A bunch of famous people, socialites, all of the stuff, had them come into her house, and then she paired them up with their astrology sign. At this party, each guest had the opportunity to get a psychic reading of some sort. They did tarot cards, crystal ball gazers, palm readers, and then people to read your astrology. Well, this is what the house looks like. It's kind of like a castle on the outside. So everything was going great until the guy that she had hired to read the tarot cards got super pissed because apparently he asked her for a cocktail. She went to get it. She started talking to the people that were there, got distracted, forgot all about it. Well, then he throws this big fit, says that he's leaving. He made sure he told her before he left that she was an unsufferable, ungracious hostess and that he had never been treated so badly, and he was going to put a curse on her in the house. Quote, I lay a curse upon you in this house. I do not forget and I do not forgive. Remember that. And 2 weeks later, everything went to hell rapidly. So she had always been a skeptic. She didn't really believe in all of the spooky stuff until she started hearing walking around in her house. The rooms would be cold. She couldn't get them to warm up. She started hearing all kinds of noise and people talking. The doors would lock and trap her in a room. But then she started hearing this song that would play throughout the house. She couldn't find where it was coming from, and it was called Mockingbird Hill. It would play on a loop. Then her house got broken into. Her car was vandalized. She tried to have another party. While she was having the party, the house caught on fire. No one knows why. And the cartel moved in next door, and they did not like her at all, and they would harass her anytime she went outside. But get this, the kicker of it, she once found a photo of herself underneath her pillow, and the face had been scratched out. This is her little dog that was freaking out, did not want to go in the house. He'd lived there for years, then just suddenly was like, no, I'm not doing it. And he ended up having to be rehomed because he got so much anxiety. He was pulling his own fur out. After he was rehomed, he was fine, lived a long life. Then the worst happened. 3 of her friends, her very close friends, passed away, and all 3 of them had been at the astrology party. 2 of them unalived themselves, and 1 died in the house. So she had moved out. She let her secretary move in. They found the secretary dead, face down, in the room that had caught fire just in the bedroom. It was locked from the inside. She was not a smoker or anything like that. The fire department didn't know how the fire started, and the coroner that checked her out has no idea. It's never been determined how she died. At that point, she was super freaked out. She invited a psychic to come in and see what was going on with the home. Apparently, he took some photos that had ghostly images in it. All of the things that he found were in the same places that the dog used to freak out at. He found out back in 1939, the home had actually been 4 apartments. While it was apartments, 4 single women died. One of them that had unalived herself, when they found her, the neighbors said that they had heard the song Mockingbird Hill playing continuously all day long in her apartment. Another creepy fact about that, Pat's cousin that unalived herself had been complaining about hearing the song Mockingbird Hill playing on a loop in her head. Ended up having to have an exorcist come over. She moved out, never went back. The people that live there now say that they haven't really had any issues, so they don't know if whatever it was went with Pat or they got rid of it. I don't know. But do you think she was actually cursed by the tarot card reader? Because I do, because, what else?
Today I'm going to tell you guys about an insane serial killer. His name is Rodney Alcala. You might recognize him as the game show killer. There's a movie with Anna Kendrick that came out a little while ago, and it's about him. I almost told you guys about him in the 50 States, 50 Serial Killers series. He would have been the one from California, but I just felt like there were some other ones that are more notorious for California, but I've been wanting to tell you guys about him since then. So I'm gonna get right into the story. So again, we're talking about Rodney Alcala, and he was born August 23rd of 1943 in Texas. He grew up with his mom, his dad, and his 3 siblings, and he and his family ended up relocating to Mexico in 1951 when he was only 8 years old. But 3 years later, when he was 11, his father ended up abandoning them. And so his mom decided to move him and his siblings back to the United States, back to LA. So he started school there and was pretty decently likable and popular. His peers seemed to like him, and so did his teachers. He did well in school. He actually went to a private school and was on the cross country team. He did yearbook, and eventually he graduated high school, and again, he just seemed like a regular good kid. In 1961, after he graduated, he was 17, he joined the army, and this is when he started to have some issues. He would talk back, he was manipulative, he was vindictive, and he didn't listen well at all. So obviously this is all very concerning when you're in the army, and there's a huge thing with chain of command, listening to your superiors. That's not good to have when you're in the army. And we also find out that he was disciplined multiple times for assaulting multiple women while he was in the army. And in 1964, he suddenly went AWOL. He was stationed in Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and he just disappeared and hitchhiked all the way back to California to where his mom was. And it's reported that he just had a nervous breakdown randomly. Obviously, you can't just abandon your duties when you're in the army. There's consequences for that. So they have a psychologist look at him, and he is diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, and he was discharged from the army. He then decides to move back to California. He goes back to school, and he graduates from UCLA. It was around the time that he graduated that he started committing a bunch of crimes, though. Other than the fact that he started assaulting women while he was in the army, and there's not really any specific record of all of those, this is the first documented known crime that we have of his. On September 25th of 1968, Rodney approached an 8-year-old girl named Tally Shapiro, and she was leaving school. He lured her, saying he knew her parents. He ended up forcing her in the car, and then he brought her to his apartment in Hollywood. Fortunately, a man named Donald Haynes was driving past and saw him forcing a little girl into his car. The police end up tracking him down based on the guy's description in the car, and when police arrive, they find Tally in a pool of her own blood. She had been essayed and beaten with a steel bar. She ended up being in a coma for 32 days after all of the injuries and torture that she was exposed to, and then obviously she probably spent a lifetime trying to recover and heal from this. Unfortunately, by the time police arrived, Rodney had already fled, and they searched for who did this, but at the time they didn't catch him. But they did have a warrant out for his arrest. But Rodney is worried that he's going to get caught, so he flees to New York, and he decides to enroll in NYU. And he uses the alias John Berger so that hopefully no one finds him. And on June of 1971, after he's in New York for a little while, he sees a girl moving furniture into her apartment. She had just moved in. She was 23-year-old Cornelia Creeley. And he played the Good Samaritan card. He offered to help her move her stuff. She was happy to have the help. It's hard to move your furniture when you're just one person. So he helps her, and the next thing we know, she was found on June 12th in her apartment deceased. She had been essayed and strangled in her own nylon stockings. At the time, her murder was investigated, but they didn't have much to go off of, and the case ended up going cold. They had no idea that Rodney had done this at this point. And so, again, Rodney gets away with another horrific violent crime. Once again, because he's worried he's going to get caught, he relocates to another state. He flees New York, and he goes to New Hampshire this time, and he somehow gets a job at a children's art camp as a camp counselor using the alias John Berger. He just spells the last name slightly different than before. At this point, the FBI was involved in the search for him in regards to the kidnapping and essay of Tally in California, and so the FBI has a national search for him, and they ended up adding him to their list of 10 most wanted fugitives in early 1971. And so now, like, this is a nationwide thing, like his wanted poster is everywhere. And while he's at this camp helping the kids, probably preying on them and hurting them too, 2 people recognize him from their wanted poster and call the police. He ends up getting arrested and extradited back to California, but when it came time for the prosecution and trial, they couldn't get Tally to testify. Tally's family had moved her back to Mexico. This is honestly super understandable. They didn't want her to go back through all the trauma and like stress and like just having to face him again. That would have been horrible. And so they said that she's not going to testify at trial. And so they can't really get him for the attempted murder on Tally. They are able to convict him of a lesser charge, but that means he's only sentenced to 3 years, and he ended up getting paroled after only 34 months. So in 1974, he is let out again. Less than 60 days after he is out on parole, he is rearrested because he assaulted a 13-year-old girl after offering her a ride home from school. He was convicted and sent to prison for 2 years again before being paroled once again. Not sure why they're giving him such little time. Like, he's clearly going to do this again. He's a horrible dude. He was released in 1977, free again to hurt whoever he wanted. Again, he's on parole, but that clearly didn't slow him down last time. The only thing that's different this time is he was added to the registered S-offender list. After his release, his parole officer, for whatever reason, even though he's a known flight risk, let him travel to New York. It's not a normal thing for a parole officer to let someone like this do. But he goes to New York, and a week into his trip there, a woman by the name of Ellen Jane Hover, who was 23, went missing. She was also the goddaughter of Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. She was last seen at her apartment on July 15th, and when police investigated her disappearance, they see in her calendar she was supposed to meet with a John Berger that day. At the time, they don't know that that's Rodney's alias, so they're like, who's this John Berger guy? Later that same year, the FBI receives a tip about Rodney's arrest in New Hampshire, and so they bring him in for questioning in regards to Ellen's disappearance. They think maybe he's involved. So they interview him, and they're like, this guy is definitely suspicious. He becomes a suspect, but at the time they didn't have enough to arrest him, and since they didn't have her body, they couldn't really get anyone for murder at the time anyways, so they end up having to let him go. Her remains ended up being found a year later in 1978. She apparently had been an aspiring model and was supposed to be taking photos with a photographer, the last name Berger. After Rodney was questioned in her murder, but before her body was found, Rodney ends up moving back to LA. He actually ended up being questioned in another investigation into the Hillside Strangler case that was also active during the time in California, which, if you don't know already, in the late 1900s, there were multiple active serial killers in California, and so there's a ton of overlap with like people they interviewed and different serial killers and different victims, and so there's a lot of confusion on who was the serial killer that killed like what person. And so he was interviewed in suspicion of being one of the Hillside Stranglers, but he ended up being ruled out. After this, he started taking on the idea that he was a photographer. He started convincing literally hundreds of people, both men and women, mostly teenagers actually, that he was a professional photographer for fashion, and he would do photo shoots for his portfolio. But a lot of these photos were of naked teenagers, and he did this for years. One woman who was 17 at the time he photographed her in 1979 said years later that he was super professional. He had told her that he had all this experience and all this kind of stuff, so in her mind she was like happy to model for him. She also saw in his portfolio that there's spread after spread of naked teenage boys. So this is something he was doing all the time. And likely all these people were victims of his as well, especially because they are teenagers and children, and he's a full-grown adult. In 1977, on November 9th, an 18-year-old girl named Jill Terry Barcombe went missing from LA. She was later found deceased in a knee-to-chest position, kind of like a fetal position, and she was naked from the waist down. It was believed she was essayed and strangled with a rope and then beaten like brutally. At the time, investigators were still searching for the Hillside Stranglers, so they thought she was actually a victim of theirs, and so she was tied to that case. But eventually, after the Hillside Stranglers were caught and they never confessed to her killing, they realized she might not be related, and then years later they realized she was actually one of Rodney's victims, but it took a long time. On December 16th of 1977, a 27-year-old named Georgia Marie Wickstead was found dead in her apartment in Malibu. She was a nurse, and she had last been seen by another nurse who worked with her, and Georgia had driven the other nurse home that night after they had gone out to a bar. And when Georgia never showed up for work the next morning, that friend and coworker reported her missing. And when police went to check on her, they found that there were signs of forced entry at her front door. When they went inside, they found her deceased. She had been posed naked on the floor of her bedroom. She had been strangled with her own nylon stockings and was mutilated and beaten. They ended up collecting evidence at this crime scene and ended up collecting DNA, but at the time we didn't really have like an understanding or science that like could really like do anything with DNA. So they collected a bunch of stuff, but we didn't didn't have DNA in trials yet. Like, DNA wasn't used in trials until the 1980s. And so at the time, even though they had this evidence, they didn't know how to use it yet. It will come in handy later, but right now it didn't lead to a conviction. June 24th of the next year, a 32-year-old legal secretary named Charlotte Lee Lambs was found dead in the laundry room of her apartment complex. She had also been beaten and strangled. This time it was with a shoelace. And again, they collected evidence, but they weren't able to use any of the DNA at the time. And around this time is when a very popular game show called The Dating Game was being filmed in the area. And somehow, I don't really know how he got like casted into this, but Rodney became a contestant. He was one of the show's bachelors, and basically there's a bunch of bachelors going after one girl, and then the winner gets to go on a date with the bachelorette. He's introduced as a successful photographer. Afterwards, one of the other bachelors said that Rodney was super strange and he wasn't a big fan, but Rodney somehow ended up winning the contest. I guess somehow, like, to the viewers, he seemed charming and witty, and so somehow he ends up winning, and he's supposed to go on a date with the bachelorette of the episode. Her name was Cheryl Bradshaw, but she said he was creepy and literally refused to date him. And honestly, her gut feeling that he was weird and creepy probably saved her life. And so now, not only has he been seen nationally for being on an FBI wanted poster, he's also been seen on TV in like a fun little dating game show. Months after his appearance on the show, his killing spree continues. On February 14th of 1979, he picks up a 15-year-old hitchhiker named Monique Hoyt, and he brought her to his apartment before he essayed her and then drove her to a secluded area in Joshua Tree, and he took naked photos of her, and then he also took photos of him actively like essaying her. He bound her and continued to assault and torture her before he hit her over the head with a rock. He put her in his car. He thinks she's like unconscious, and he starts to drive but realizes he needs to use the bathroom, so he stops at a gas station. Monique ended up being able to escape the car, and she fled and filed a police report. Immediately is arrested on this, and you would think that this would be the end. Someone was literally brought out to the middle of the desert, beaten and assaulted and essayed by this man. Very clear he was probably going to kill her. She reports it. They catch him. That should be the end. But no. His mom posts bail and he's out again. I don't understand how that happens. A few months later in June, on June 13th actually, 21-year-old Jill Parento left work early to go to a baseball game, but she never showed up for work the next day, which was not like her, so people called the police, and the police went to go check on her. When they arrive at her place, they see signs of forced entry. They go inside, and they find her dead and naked in her bathroom floor, and she was posed with pillows. They notice she also was beaten and strangled, and they discover that her murderer had crawled through the bathroom window after he had broken the glass, and he had actually cut himself on the broken glass, and so they found blood from the perpetrator at the crime scene and collected as evidence. Again, at the time, they didn't really have the resources to test it too much, but later this comes in handy at trial. We also later learned from a friend of Jill's that Jill had actually met Rodney multiple times at a club beforehand. So they think his MO was to get to know people, break into their homes, and then assault and torture them at their home. A week later, on June 20th, a 12-year-old little girl named Robin Christine Samso went missing. She was at the beach with her friends, and then she was riding her bike to ballet lessons, and then she disappeared. And 12 days later, her body was found. She had been beaten and essayed and stabbed to death. Her friends told the police that before she left the beach on her bike, a weird man approached them and wanted to take their photos, and he was super creepy and weird. And so the police get these kids to work with a sketch artist and like describe the guy, and they come up with this sketch, and obviously he looks very much like Rodney, and they start circulating this photo. And less than a month later, Rodney's parole officer actually recognizes Rodney and is like, this is definitely Rodney. Like, we know Rodney's history. This guy looks exactly like him. And he turns Rodney into the police. They track down Rodney and arrest him, and he is found guilty in May of 1980 and sentenced to death just for Robin's disappearance. At this point, they don't know about all the murders. They just know about like one or two of the things that he has done. He is sentenced to death. He tries to overturn his conviction multiple times. And the second time in 2001, and he's facing a retrial, while prosecutors are preparing for his new trial, while they are waiting for his new trial in 2001, prosecutors come across something. At this point, DNA testing is very much a thing that is used in trials and in crime scenes. And they realize that his DNA matches the DNA from multiple cold cases back in the 1970s. And they discovered that he matched male DNA, if you know what I mean by that, from 2 of the murder cases in LA, and then in the murders of 4 other women. So all 6 cases that I mentioned previously. They are also able to test the blood found at Jill Parento's house, and they find that it matches him. And then they also get to search all of his stuff, and they find a pair of Charlotte Lamb's earrings in his storage locker. So now he's not only facing a retrial for Robin's murder, he's facing trial for 6 other murders as well. In 2010, he was sentenced to death once again. He was found guilty, and he was labeled as a predator. He ended up living out the rest of his life in prison. He died in 2021 when he was 77 in California. Before he died though, they start to look at all of his photographs that he had like in his portfolio of these hundreds and hundreds of people. And in March of 2010, the police department released 120 of his photographs and asked the public for help identifying these people because they're hoping to identify any of the women or children or teenagers that he was photographing. They had over 900 additional photos that they never made public because they were too like sexually explicit. They said that 21 people came forward to identify themselves, and at least 6 other families said they believed they recognized loved ones who had disappeared years ago and were never found. Unfortunately, they never were able to like officially connect the photos to any missing people. He's thankfully not able to hurt any more people, but the amount of people he like tortured and hurt, like I think that everything I told you was just scraping the surface. And the fact that he went on a dating show and was like seen as this like eligible bachelor, and they like were hyping him up and saying how great he was, and like this girl was kind of dating him, that's terrifying. Like people were watching him thinking he was a sweet, charming guy, wanting this girl to date this like bachelor that seemed cool, while he's actively killing people, while he's actively a serial killer. That's horrifying. And it makes you think, like, how many people are we probably watching on TV today or on social media or whatever that have probably like done horrific things and we have no idea? Like we could be watching serial killers on TV or on TikTok or whatever and have no idea.
I have had many paranormal experiences since I was a child. Things have followed me, even back home. I used to think all the places I lived were haunted, but now I believe I'm the one who's haunted. When I was little, my great-grandma would tell me not to be scared of the visitors because they were just passing through. As I got older, I realized she meant ghosts or spirits. When the pandemic hit, I decided to switch careers and began working in the death field. I often enter people's homes and observe how they lived. Many times, I felt like someone was right behind me, breathing down my neck or standing beside me. On one occasion, I went with a coworker to a home to start the process of moving the deceased to the morgue. As I walked toward a part of the house with 2 doors leading into bedrooms, I noticed one of the doors were cracked open, revealing furniture covered in sheets. Suddenly, I heard someone yell, "Stop!" Startled, I looked behind me, but my coworker was still talking to the others in the house and hadn't heard anything. I turned back to the door, and as I touched the doorknob, I heard the same stern voice say, "Stop!" At that point, I backed off and waited for the others to help me with the removal. When we got into the work vehicle, I told my coworker what I heard, but she said she hadn't heard anything. From that moment on, whenever I felt a heavy presence or energy, I would speak out loud, explaining what I was doing. I felt like maybe the spirits thought I was invading their space, even though they were no longer alive. However, what was happening in my home was much worse. I had been in training when we attended a death scene. The person had taken their own life after doing something terrible. We handled the removal, and the body was taken to the morgue. A few days later, my youngest child asked me, "Mom, have you been coming home and leaving right away?" I said no. She told me she kept hearing someone moving in and out of the rooms. A couple of days after that, my oldest said, "Mom, we keep hearing someone call us, but we know it's not you or Dad." I asked if they had seen anything, and my oldest described seeing a person dressed in a shirt and pants. She described it more in detail, but for identifying purposes, I won't describe it. My oldest told me they'd been seeing the figure for a couple of weeks, and even her dog had been barking at it. At this point, I'm on full alert because her description is like the person I picked up. It is safe to say my husband doesn't see anything or feel anything, so he doesn't take notice. My oldest can see and hear things. My youngest only hears them. So when they tell me something's wrong, I listen and take action to protect them. I told my kids that if they saw the spirit again, they should tell it to leave and that it wasn't welcome.
Listen, I'm not the kind of person who believes in this kind of stuff. Ghosts, hauntings, all that. I always figured it was just stories people told to freak each other out. I thought I was above it all, that being scared and seeing ghosts, it was just a case of mind over matter. But what I'm about to tell you, I swear to God, this person's American. Man, I swear to God, this really happened. It started when my friends, Kate and Tom, moved into this old craftsman-style house just outside Portland. I think that's in Oregon.
Oh.
Real pretty place. Wood floors, those old built-in bookshelves, stained glass windows. The kind of home people describe as having character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At first, they were over the moon about it, fixing up rooms, unpacking boxes, all that newly moved in energy, deciding what shade of beige to plaster the walls in. But after a few weeks, Kate started saying that the house felt off. God, everyone says that, don't they? It's such a cliche, but that's what she said. Off. She couldn't explain it, just that she always felt like someone was in the room with her. Not seeing anyone, just feeling it. She didn't tell Tom right away because she knew that he'd think she was just being jumpy. But then she started catching glimpses of something, just flickering at the edge of her vision, behind a chair, under the desk, near the hutch. What's a hutch, please?
Where rabbits live.
Love.
Well, they
Rabbits.
live and laugh.
Never fully seen, just enough to make your stomach drop. When she finally told Tom, he laughed it off at first, said it was probably just weird lighting or shadows from the street, but that night, she woke up to the sound of furniture scraping across the bedroom floor. She got up, turned on the light. Nothing there. But there was a mark on the floor, right under the dresser, like something had been pressed up against it. Tom still didn't buy it. The house was quiet. Kate wasn't home yet, so he sat down on the couch to scroll through his phone. Out of nowhere, he noticed movement in the mirror above the fireplace. Just the tiniest shift. When he looked up, there was someone crouched behind the armchair. Pale, thin, not moving, eyes wide. He stood up, heart pounding, and walked around the chair, and there was nothing there, except this weird indentation in the carpet, like someone had been kneeling there for hours. After that, they both started seeing things. Stuff would move when they were out. Chairs would be turned, but always facing the wall. Sometimes they'd hear a creak or a shuffle, but never catch anything in the act. One night, Kate woke up and found Tom sitting up in bed, staring at the closet. He looked pale as hell. "I saw it," he said. "It was in there, crouching. It lives behind things."
Oh.
They tried to rationalise it, stress, mould.
Do you remember in Uncanny when they did
hallucination,
They did the whole thing about mould and how it like gets the spores get into your head and make you hallucinogen.
Really good point. But then it started escalating. They were watching TV one night when the screen flickered to static just for a second. And in that split second, they saw it. In the reflection, a figure crouched behind the couch, right behind them.
It's Peter Crouch.
When it is tall and thin.
Yeah.
When they turned, it was gone. They didn't sleep in the house that night. They slept in the car on the driveway with all the lights on. Next morning, they called an inspector. He checked everything, the vents, the crawl space, walls. No animals, no mould, nothing wrong with the wiring. Before he left, he said something that really got under their skin. "You said the old last owners left in a hurry, right? You might want to find out why." So Kate did. She looked up the country records. It turns out the previous owners had actually filed a restraining order, but not against a person. It was filed against something listed as an unexplained presence. They tried to contact the previous owners, but the letter came back unopened. These days, Kate and Tom still live there. They've cleared out almost all of the furniture, so there's nothing to hide behind. They keep the lights on all night. They must be going insane.
Yeah.
But every so often, they catch a glimpse of it. Something crouched low in the corner, behind a plant, under the island in the kitchen, always still, always watching. And the last time I talked to Kate, she said it's getting closer every night. Just a little bit closer. And the creepiest part? When she told me the story, she kept looking over my shoulder, like she thought she saw it there, too.
Have you ever seen a person give up and abandon everything, like on a random day he was like, nah, you know what, I'm done with this shit, screw this. He basically decided to rage quit. Well, if he didn't, let me tell you that there is a whole village that did this. Yes, a whole village full of people out of nowhere went like, okay, let's disappear. And if you're wondering how's that even possible, well, you need to listen to this story. It all started with this guy right here whose name was Joe. You see, Joe was a guy who lived a long time ago, okay? We're talking 20th century. And unlike you, he was not unemployed. He was a skilled trapper and a fur trader. Another way to say it, he sends animals to heaven so he can make clothes. So one day, Joe decided to travel to North Canada to see how the business is going there. So he packed his stuff and he was heading to a place called the Angikuni Lake, where he knew that there was a village so he can sell. So after probably days of walking, Joe finally made it to the Angikuni Lake where there's the village. So here he was so excited. He was like, yeah, let's go. We're about to sell some stuff. You see, to his surprise, when he finally made it to the village, not a single individual, not a single human was there. So here, normally, Joe was confused. He was like, whoa, hold on. I know this village, there's supposed to be people. What the f going on? He decided to walk a little bit to see if the villagers were grouped somewhere else, but no, nothing. Yes, the villagers disappeared just like that. And you know what's interesting? They left everything behind. They left their food, their clothes, their tools. I'm telling you, they left everything. There was also no trace of them leaving, you know, no footsteps, none of that. This is where Joe realized that he's not selling shit. He came here for business, he got none, so he's low-key mad. That's why when he got back to his town, he was like, okay, I swear to God, I'm telling everybody I didn't go there for nothing. So he told everyone about it. The case started getting bigger and bigger, and until this day, nobody knows where did they go. Some people say that it's aliens. Yes, they think that aliens took the villagers, and respectfully, shut the fuck up. Other people are like, nah, they were looking for food, so they decided to leave the area and migrate. Bro, they had food in front of them. Why would they leave the food in front of them to go look for other food? So yeah, people just yap and make theories, but nobody knows what truly happened.
Let's read some more scary stories that were DM'd to us. So I live in my grandparents' old house because my house is on the market. Their house was built in the 1930s, specifically 1936, and I have this tiny closet in my room. And a couple of months after I moved in, I had kept on hearing crying like a baby, and then I did some research on my house. I found out that someone had died there. A mother and a baby. It was unknown how the mother died, but it was suspected that she hung herself after her baby's death who had died at childbirth. This was a short story, but now I have a mother and a young baby in my room, and I suspect that my room used to be the nursery or the main bedroom. It's really creepy, but they're actually really nice to me. They can't communicate to me verbally, but the mother sometimes comforts me when I'm in pain. So this is creepy, but this is like one of those sweet ones. This person feels like the spirits that they have in their house are actually nice. I feel so bad for the mother and the baby, but I'm really glad that they're not like harming the people who live in the house. And that's really sweet that she's looking after the new person that lives in her old house. Okay, moving on. This story starts with me and my friends. We were around 10 and at a play center. We were near the ball pit and I looked into the pit to see a kid in there alone. So me being me, I went down there. My friend stayed with some other girl we had met, and I asked if she wanted to play with us. She looked around 5 or 7, and she was alone, and I loved making new friends, so I thought, why not make friends with her? And she said to me, yes, but can we stay here? And I said, of course. And I turned around to shout to my friends. They came over, and I said my new friend wants to play with us, but she wants to stay in the ball pit. And they asked me, what friend? So I turn around to point to her, but she is nowhere to be seen, and I know she didn't leave because ball pits are noisy to get in and out of. So I would have heard her. So I think I encountered a ghost at 10 years old. That is freaky. That's giving like Five Nights at Freddy's or something like that. And this person said that the play center was Pirates Play Center in Nottingham. And they also said that there's like other creepy stories, like people have had other like creepy weird encounters at this place, and when they figure out like more stuff that's happened there, they're gonna let me know. So I will let you know as soon as I know.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
I worked in this office building in Greektown, and the building actually used to be a furniture factory. Every day at my lunch break, I would always see this old man. He would walk up and down the street, but he would never go anywhere. Like literally from corner to corner, just back and forth. And he always out there at the same time, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Never any other time. And I don't never see him like walk onto the street. Hell, I never saw him walk off of the street. But every day like clockwork, if I look out that window between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m., that man was walking up and down the street. I asked a couple of my coworkers what was up with him, and they was like, oh, it's just some old man that's getting his exercise. And I'm like, but y'all don't find it weird that he only go from corner to corner? Everybody like, we don't ask why old people do the stuff that they do. I mean, like, if he ain't bothering nobody, who cares? And I'm like, well, I do. Because why from 3 to 4 is this man walking from corner to corner? Why? Every single day? That don't seem weird. And where do we come from? It's a restaurant with a patio across the street from us. And because I go there so much, I was cool with one of the waiters. So I asked one of the waiters, like, have you ever seen an old man who just be walking up and down the street? And he was like, no, what are you talking about? So I tell him about the old man, and he was like, you know what? It's crazy because I heard one of your coworkers talking about that before. I ain't never seen nobody walking up and down the street though. So I was like, okay. The next day, I'm gonna come down here at 3 o'clock and I'm gonna try to see if I can see this little old man walking up and down the street. I got down there, I think it was like 3:15, 3:20. I did not see this man. Not once did I see this man. The next day I go to work. I'm up in the office building. I'm in the break room. I look down. Guess what I see? The old man. I see my waiter friend is across the street. He outside. I call his phone. I say, hey, you don't see that man walking up and down the street? I can literally see him stand up straight, turn around, look at our building, and looking up and down the street. And he like, no, I don't see nothing. So I take a recording. Literally, I video record this man walking up and down the street. I send it to my friend. I said, now you don't see him? And he was like, Kat, I don't know what the hell you see, but down here, it's not down here. I take off running downstairs because I got to see that the man not down there for myself. He wasn't down there. He wasn't down there. I am being consumed by trying to figure out who the fuck this little old man is. And why is he walking up and down the street from corner to corner? What is going on from 3 to 4 p.m.? What is happening? It's the weekend. Saturday and Sunday, I'm off. I should be sitting back kicking it with my friends. I'm not because I'm stressed out. Who the fuck is this man and why is he walking up and down this street? I done went through a whole quarter because I am chain smoking, trying to figure out who the fuck this man is. I call all my little co-workers. I'm contacting them and I'm like, y'all got to know something about this man. Anybody? Don't nobody know nothing about him except for this one lady. This one lady, she say, yeah, actually, I do know somebody who know about it. Of course the Latinos knew. Of course it was the Latinos who knew. She sent me to this man named Hector. He the maintenance man. So here come Monday. I'm coming to work and I'm coming to look for Hector. Where is he at? Somebody got to tell me something. And of course, it's Monday. I find him where he always is when I come into work. Every single Monday, this man is fighting with this light that's behind his clock face. Let me paint this picture for you. It is a 20-foot ladder posted up against the wall. You look up and all you see is legs and ass because half of a pretty healthy size Mexican man is in the face of a clock trying his best to screw in a light bulb and cursing up a storm. I don't think I ever heard so many Santa Marias. I don't know that much Spanish, but I know, goddamn it, bitch, get in the hole when I hear it. Now, the clock is like recessed into the wall. It's fucking huge, right? And because I'm a little shit and I know the whole wall is metal, I knock on the wall and I know it's gonna ring up to his ears. Every single time I scare the shit out this man. It's my guilty pleasure. I know. And then Hector, he always know that it's me. So the first thing that he scream is, "Ay, Dios, gata!" For those of you who don't know, gata is Spanish for cat. So here come Hector wiggling his little booty down this dang on ladder. And he look up at me, and I literally mean look up at me because Hector is only like 5'4". He be trying to be mad at me, and then I smile at him, and he be like, "Oi, give me a hug, give me a hug." He's like, "What bring you down here today? What's going on?" I said, "I got a question for you." He said, "Of course you do. Your mind is always wandering. What's?" I say, "Do you know about the man who walk up and down the street between 3 and 4 p.m.? Hector face go blank. He said, see, why do you want to know?" I said, "Oh, do I want to know? What, you okay?" He says, "Ay, Miss Scott, no, it's not okay. It's not okay." I said, "Oh, tell me, I gotta know. I'm sorry. Now I really gotta know what happened." Apparently, when the building was functioning as a furniture company, this little old man was one of the employees. He was one of the most loyal employees and also one of the first employees that they fired for absolutely no reason. Y'all know how the company budget restructure comes around and some people are isolated out. He was one of those people. But see, they didn't understand that This man literally needed this job in order for him and his wife to survive. Now, they decided to sit up here and say, well, you know what? We're going to give you a severance pay, but it's going to be in a couple of different installments. By the time they got down to the last 3 installments, they wasn't trying to get this man his money. So every day between 3 and 4 p.m., before the payroll department left the building for the day, he would be marching from corner to corner in front of the building in protest of him not getting his money. Well, unfortunately, this little old man caught pneumonia. And during one of his marches, he died on the street. Now, here's the crazy part. In front of the building, there are a couple of flower beds, but nothing ever grows in these flower beds. Except for one flower bed. It's one flower bed that shoots up. First in the spring, it shoots up tulips. And then after that, all different types of flowers will pop up in this one flower. Don't nobody water the flower bed. It don't have an automatic sprinkler on it. And out of the 7 flower beds that's out there, it's literally the only one with flowers in it. Go figure, that's the exact spot that the old man passed away in. So what I did was, I went and got one of every piece of currency that the United States have. I took all the different pieces of currency, like literally like $1, $5, $10, $20, 50, 100, pennies, nickel, all of it. I put one of each one in a glass bottle, sealed it with wax, and then I wrapped the bottle in $2 bills. $2 bills got some significance to it. I'm gonna send y'all down your own rabbit hole. Go look up Asian cultures and the significance of $2 bills to them. Now you know why I wrapped the bottle in $2 bills. And I buried it in the flower bed where my little ghost man passed away at. The next day, I'm in the office. I'm finna eat my lunch. It's 3 o'clock. I look down out the window and the man is standing by the flower bed looking up at me with a big old smile on his face. I looked at him, I smiled, and I bowed my head, and you can literally see him dissipate into the ether. I'm sitting at my desk. All of a sudden, all I hear is, "Oi, where's Miss Cox? Where's Miss Cox?" I look up, I say, "Hector? Hello, hey, what's up? What's wrong?" Hector is crying. He is hysterical. I'm like, "I need you to calm down. I need you to take a deep breath. What's going on?" He said, you did it. Please tell me it was you that did it." I said, "Did what? I do a lot. I'm not trying to put my name on everything." He said, "The little man outside, you freed him." What you talk about, Hector? He says you paid him. You gave him his severance. You gave it to him. He's resting peacefully. I get to laughing. And I'm like, "Hector, how you know that, Hector? What happened? What you talk about, Hector?" He said, "Did you notice anything when you came in the building? Was it different? Did you notice?" And I'm like, other than the fact that it's Monday and I didn't see your booty wiggling out the face of the clock? No, I didn't notice nothing. He said, "That's it. That's it." He was the light in the clock. He was the one who was messing it up. That was his job. He was the maintenance man. He was my uncle. You helped him rest. I just love a happy ending, don't you? People resting in peace and stuff. It makes me feel good.
I really don't know what to think about this case, and honestly, it's quite shocking, so let me know your thoughts on this. This is Joan Baird. That's how she was born. She was born in Brooklyn, New York on May 12th of 1930. Unfortunately, her parents would pass away at an early age for her due to a fire. Now, initially, police thought that maybe this fire was a bit suspicious, but it would later be ruled an accident. Joan would go on to live with her aunt and uncle, and then she took their last name, and so she became Joan Natress. I think that's how you say the name. She would go on to graduate high school and college and then took several secretary jobs, and there she met her husband. Her husband was Martin Reich, I think that's how you say that name, and he was an executive at one of the companies that she had worked at. They went on to have 2 children together and lived a seemingly normal life. But on October 24th of 1961, things would get pretty strange. That morning, Martin woke up and he had to catch a flight at 8 a.m. He needed to be in New York. This was a business trip he had already planned. So he went off to New York and Joan stayed home with the children. She was a stay-at-home mom at this point. She would get the kids up for breakfast, feed them breakfast. She had an appointment with her daughter that day, and she took her youngest son over to the neighbors to be watched while she was at this dentist appointment with her daughter. They did some shopping after the dentist appointment, and then they came home. Joan would pick up her son and feed the kids lunch, and during this time, there were several people who had come to the house. There was like the postman, the milkman, and also a dry cleaner
person. He was coming to pick up some suits for Martin to be dry cleaned. Everyone said that Joan was seemingly normal. The neighbor boy would then come over to spend some time with Joan's oldest daughter because they were roughly the same age. The kids played together. They watched Joan prune some of her flowers around her garden. She was like walking around with her pruning knife, which was normal. At about 2 p.m., Joan came out and took both kids over to the neighbor's house. The kids stayed there to play for a little bit. At about 2:15, the neighbor lady where the kids were playing, she noticed that Joan had come out of the house. She looked to be wearing a trench coat and was holding something like extended from her body, and it looked like it was covered in red, but the neighbor lady thought that Joan was just chasing after some kids. An hour after that, another neighbor girl got off of the school bus. She noticed a vehicle that she hadn't seen in the neighborhood before in the Riche parking lot. Not parking lot, driveway, sorry. The neighbor lady would eventually bring Joan's daughter back over to her house because she had to go on a shopping trip. So she dropped the little girl off and then left. But when she got back about an hour later, the little girl came back to her house saying, "Mommy is gone and the kitchen is covered in red paint." The neighbor lady went back over to the Riche house, Joan's house. She found Lillian's little brother crying in his crib because his diaper needed to be changed. She also noticed that the kitchen was a mess. It was covered in a bodily substance that I can't say on this app. The neighbor called the police. Immediately they came over, and at first they thought that maybe Joan had done this to herself. So they searched the house looking for her, but they couldn't find her. That's when they realized that something very strange had happened here. They started investigating, bringing the entire police force in to investigate. Police started calling local hospitals, morgues, like anywhere that they could think of to see if anyone had seen Joan. When they hadn't seen her, they called her husband Martin and told him he needed to come home. He caught the next flight out back to Boston, which is where they lived. Looking inside the house, they found several other clues. The letters that had been delivered that day by the postman had not been opened. They hadn't even been brought into the house. In the kitchen, the telephone directory was it was open to a page of like emergency numbers. They also found some alcohol in the trash can, but Martin said that this was alcohol that they had drank in the night before, but there was also beer bottles in there. He couldn't explain why those were there. Police also found her wallet inside the house, and inside was about $10, and that would have, in today's money, that's about $105, which is crazy. But so she had quite a bit of money there, so it doesn't seem like it was a robbery. There were several sightings of Joan or supposed sightings after she went missing, after her neighbor saw her last. There was someone who saw a woman that was matching Joan's description and also matched the clothing that she was wearing, hunched down, walking on the north side of Massachusetts Route 2A. She appeared cold and untidy. She was kind of hunched over. She was trying to keep herself warm. Another woman was seen with blood running down her legs, and she was seen walking north on Route 128 on the median strip. She also seemed disoriented, seemed to be clutching something towards her midsection. Going back to the kitchen, there was blood all over. They did find several handprints in the blood. I just said I couldn't say it, and then I said it. But they found several handprints, but they couldn't match Joan's fingerprints to this because she's missing, obviously. And it did appear as if someone had tried to clean this mess up. They found some of Martin's underwear on the floor, or maybe they found some of David's underwear, which was their youngest son. They found some of his underwear on the floor, almost as if someone had tried to clean it up. And also this drawing paper roll was also there. Someone was trying to clean it up. But it wasn't just in the kitchen that this blood was found. They also found it on the top step, upstairs. They also found some upstairs. Also, there was a whole trail going outside towards Joan's car. They also found some blood on Joan's car. They also found blood near the children's bedroom, which is really creepy. But what they didn't find was footprints. Even though there was a lot of blood all over this place, there were no footprints, meaning someone was very careful or something else happened. There is one more piece of evidence that I found rather fascinating. There was a reporter who started looking into the case. She found that Joan had checked out a book called The Disappearance of Brigham Young's 27th Wife. And there was also another book that she checked out, Into Thin Air. And apparently these are books about women who went missing and staged their own missing person case. And several people think that's exactly what happened to Joan. She was tired of the life that she was living, but she didn't see another way out other than to fake her own death. But other people think that something happened to her. Someone took her and did this to her. I just truly can't understand. There's a lot of more information about this case, and I highly encourage that you go check it out yourself. But what are your thoughts on this? Personally, I don't know what to think, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Follow for more true crime.